Vice President Kamala Harris officially securing the Democratic nomination for president. It comes as she moves closer to announcing her running mate, and as former President Trump prepares to campaign in Georgia this weekend. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao brings us more from Atlanta.
Just a day after kicking off a virtual roll call process, the Democratic National Committee on Friday announced that Vice President Kamala Harris has secured a majority of the convention's delegates and is now officially chosen as the party's presidential nominee. Harris, calling into the campaign headquarters, says she will formally accept a nomination next week.
We are going to win this election, and it is going to take all of us.
The unprecedented process comes after President Biden dropped out just 2 weeks ago. Democratic leaders quickly sought a nomination process that allowed anyone to run as long as they had the support of over 300 delegates instead of having to win in state primaries. On Friday, Harris's campaign announced that it raised over $300 million last month, more than double the amount of Trump's campaign. But Trump, in a Friday interview, touted his poll numbers and policies.
We're leading in the polls, it seems, by quite a bit still. With me, I want low taxes. I want a strong border. I want strong drug policy. Our country's becoming a drug-addicted country. We're like China from 200 years ago.
Meanwhile, a weaker than expected jobs report released on Friday pushed the economy back into the spotlight. While the White House knows wages are rising faster than inflation, the Trump campaign says prices are up and unemployment is rising. Within a few days, Harris will announce her VP pick. President Biden on Friday said,
"I'll let her work that out."
Why did you drop out? Why did you drop out?
Harris plans to stump in battleground states next week with her running mate. Trump this Saturday will be campaigning in Atlanta at the same exact venue where Harris held a rally just a few days ago. Reporting from Atlanta, Georgia, Iris Tao, NTD News.
And as we inch closer to learning who the vice presidential pick will be on the Harris ticket, what do each of the top contenders bring to the table? What goes into choosing one? Henry Cisneros was Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under former President Clinton. He also has firsthand experience as being a VP contender. We're happy to have him on with us now live to join us. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you for the great newscast.
Thank you so much. So, of course, we're still waiting on Vice President Harris to announce her running mate. Reports are indicating that it could come as early as this weekend. What are your thoughts on the top three names out there? Governor Josh Shapiro, Governor Tim Walz, and Senator Mark Kelly. And what do you think of each of these contenders and what they have to bring to the ticket?
Well, I think there are three outstanding possibilities, and it wouldn't surprise me if some of the others who are not defined by the press as the top three might be the eventual selection. But these three people are all very, very capable and would add to the ticket immensely. Senator Kelly has always struck me as a national leader. I've always thought, as I've listened to him, that he would make himself a great presidential candidate someday. And of course, that's one of the criteria that the vice president will be looking for. Is this a person who can do the job of president if need be, a person who's compatible with Kamala Harris? And he and she served in the Senate together and initiated legislation together. So he meets that test. Governor Shapiro, very popular in the state, a difficult state, and yet he's carried it multiple times, running for attorney general statewide and running for governor statewide, very articulate, and of course comes from a state with 19 electoral votes in the critical Midwest, arguably the single most critical state in this election. Governor Walz of Minnesota, very impressive, and every chance he's had to state the case, he's done it well and strongly. Perhaps not as well known across the country, but he brings a certain gravitas himself. There are other names who are out there, Pete Buttigieg and others across the country who may well work their way back into contention, but I certainly will accept the press's judgment that these are the three final contenders.
So, Mr. Secretary, you actually went through this very, same process of being vetted for vice president when President Reagan was running against then Vice President Walter Mondale. What does that vetting process look like from the inside?
Well, thank you for recalling one of the highlights of my public service was to get called to North Oaks, Minnesota on July 4th, 1984, to interview with Walter Mondale. He interviewed myself and the governor of Philadelphia at that time, Wilson Good, a person who was the mayor of San Francisco, but who would eventually become a U.S. Senator, Dianne Feinstein. He also interviewed Lloyd Bentsen and the eventual nominee the next time around in 1988, Mike Dukakis. So the five of us individually went up to meet with the vice president and, determined the level of compatibility and such. But the vetting basically covers every aspect of one's life, from financial transactions and management of your family affairs, your public service record, the range of leadership responsibilities that you've had and would bring to national office. It was a great honor to be reviewed. I was 35 years old, at the bottom rung of what would have been eligible. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. My family enjoyed it. I didn't expect to be selected. And in fact, that year, none of the five were selected, the five that the press thought were the five finalists. He ended up selecting Geraldine Ferraro, you will remember, from New York. She was not one of the five that was interviewed. And so it was a great surprise to the country, and I'll admit to all of us as well.
Really fascinating stuff. We can see how critical this vetting process is with all the opposition research that J.D. Vance, Vice President pick on the Republican side, is going through right now. Just quickly, we only have a moment left. If you could, tell us, as far as the Democrats' platform, what do you see as kind of the top policy issues that should be resonating with voters?
Well, I think, as we've learned in previous elections, the economy and how it affects everyone in their home budget, their family life, is the most critical issue generally in American politics. And I think that's no exception this time. The jobs levels, the reduction of inflation, the lowering of interest rates, the expansion of the economy generally will be huge. And so the degree to which the vice president is able to articulate a strategy for continuing, as I say, lower inflation, lower interest rates, higher employment levels, more prosperity generally. I would say in this year, because of the international environment, the war in Ukraine, the potential for a broader war in the Middle East, the threatening signs of China at Taiwan and in the East China Straits, all of those will be critical as well. And though international affairs is generally not the cutting edge of how people decide, in a year where there's so many threats out there, the ability to assure the public that we've got a firm handle on international affairs and support of our allies, that will be an issue for many people.
Former Housing and Urban Development Secretary under the Clinton administration, Henry Cisneros, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.